you're about to see is a record of my African safari to Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, in the fall of 1983. As such, I expect it will be mostly of interest to people who have been on safari or who are thinking of going on safari. But because it's a videotape, I suspect that this will be seen by quite a few people who may have other feelings about hunting and who may feel very strongly that there is something very wrong about hunting, particularly African species. I've been here for a little over 2 weeks now. I'm due to go home to the United States this afternoon. And I think I've learned quite a bit about game management, particularly game management of African game and the types of species that are available on this continent. As you can see from this footage and from other footage that has been taken throughout this trip, this land is very dry. It's now around the 1st of October, and this dry season will continue probably for another 2 to 3 months. This is not unusual. However, sometimes the dry season lasts a bit longer than usual, and if the game has been allowed to proliferate unchecked, half of it, of any specific species in any given year, can die from starvation. That is not sound game management. Secondly, the land needs to be used for something. Since Africa is continuing to exploit its resources, we cannot expect that the land be left alone entirely. One of the good things about trophy hunting is that by its nature, the hunter is going after the largest, oldest of each species, taking them out, and more importantly, providing some economic resources, some income to the government, to the people here, so that game management can continue. I think most Americans don't realize that where there is trophy hunting in Africa, there is no poaching. That's for the very simple reason that where there is trophy hunting, there are game department scouts, there are hunters, there are people who are involved with game management. Poachers do not in general use rifles, since guns are often scarce in this area. They use snares and poison. They kill a lot more game than they find because they kill very slowly. There are basically 3 types of areas to hunt in Africa. The first, which is not generally a viable way to hunt for the American, is on private land. The 2 types of hunting available to Americans are hunting on hunting concessions, such as the property you see here, which is called Matetsi, 120,000 acres in this concession, and on government land. Due to a specific set of circumstances, the bulk of my hunt was on government land a bit south of the Zambezi River. I hunted on approximately 1,400 square miles. That's almost 1,000,000 acres. I was the only person hunting at the time. There were 2 other safaris in the past 18 months, neither of which collected as much game as was taken and was authorized on my safari. And at this time, at all times, we were followed by a game department official who traveled around with me and with my professional hunter to see that everything was done according to the rules and regulations. Now for a moment, let's examine what happened during the safari. During the safari, I paid a number of trophy fees to the Zimbabwe government. These trophy fees can be used for game management. They help pay the salaries of the people that are involved in game management. Second of all, I took out a small number relative to the total of trophy animals. The film footage that you will see in the following minutes will show just a small fraction of the amount of game that we saw. For example, we saw daily, on average, I would say over 100 impala. I shot 3 of them in the course of 3 weeks. At the same time, I think you'll also see from the footage that all of the animal is utilized. We spent quite a bit of time packing out in Land Rover and sometimes on foot, meat, hide, and all parts of the animal. The meat is utilized, it's dried and sold, as you'll see from the assembly line type operation that was going on at the camp for the larger animals such as buffalo and elephant. The bones are even sometimes used for carvings and such, and the hunter is allowed to take back whatever part of the trophy he'd wish to have mounted or have used. In my case, I'm going to be having quite a bit of the leather tanned here in Zimbabwe and shipped back to the United States for my own use. One thing I think you'll also see is that the animals are killed very quickly. In a drought, an animal takes quite a bit of time, weeks, perhaps months, to die. In the hunting that I did in this area, the amount of time that an animal took to die was measured not in units like that, but in seconds. Pierce Taylor, the professional hunter, made a very interesting point. In St. Louis, my hometown, we have one of the world's finest zoos. When we mentioned this to him, he pointed out that he thinks that a zoo is much less humane than trophy hunting. And when I asked him why, he pointed to the number of game animals allowed to thrive in this area and the small chance that any one of them would be shot and killed versus the very lengthy, unchanging life of a creature in captivity. I mentioned that hunting on private land is not a viable way for an American to go on safari. The primary reason is this. An elephant, for example, requires a tremendous amount of acreage to exist. Each elephant eats up to 500 pounds of vegetation a day. If you look at this dry land, you'll see that an elephant is going to spend all day eating. You cannot expect an elephant or a herd of elephants to exist in a small area. By nature, they travel and eat constantly. If this 120,000 acre hunting concession were terminated, if hunting were no longer permitted, if it were somehow split up, and if farmers farmed this 120,000 acres now, elephants could not live here at all. An elephant is a tremendous destroyer of the land and the surroundings when man attempts to civilize the land. I think you'll see from the footage a large number of trees that have been pushed over. Elephants do this daily to test their strength. If you have a farm and you put up a barbed wire fence, an elephant will walk through it. If you attempt to grow food, an elephant will eat it. The alternative is to exterminate the elephants in the areas where farming occurs, or to have hunting concessions and government land where hunting is occasionally allowed, so that some revenue can come into the country, so that the game can be utilized, so that the herds can be thinned out, the young allowed to prosper, and to bring in some economic justification for this land. Trophy hunting, though it may seem unusual to most Americans, trophy hunting is the most sensible, and in fact, in many areas, the only way to preserve these African species. I should caution you that this film involves a lot of killing of game animals. If that bothers you, please don't watch it. But at the same time, please realize that this trophy hunting is the best way to preserve these very animals and these very species. Thank you. To those people who are worried about the effects of hunting on the African environment, specifically extinction, I think that the footage in this film will show a very real example of the virtue of trophy hunting. The black rhino is an animal whose numbers have dwindled for various reasons in many areas of Africa. He is on the endangered species list at this time and is protected. There is no legal hunting of black rhino in Africa. In the area that we were in, south of the Zambezi River, we saw black rhino daily. because there was hunting allowed in that area of other game animals, we could be sure that there was no poaching of the black rhino for his hide or his horn, as there might have been if there had been no hunting whatsoever in that area. Furthermore, because of the hunting allowed in that area of government land and in this hunting concession here in Metetsi, the land is being used, bringing in revenue, employing people, and the rhino's habitat is assured of being allowed to exist. As Pierce Taylor, our professional hunter, pointed out, game can be thinned out, be killed off by drought, and it will always come back as long as the land is allowed to be available for the animals to live in. I think the example of the rhino flourishing in this area is a very good case in point. I think you'll enjoy the footage of the rhino. I certainly know I enjoyed watching them.
Is there some rough light?
We're having fun now.
Hi, fellas.
How far out, Pierce? About 6 inches? What? Okay. You gonna stay there while I throw another one in? About that far left when it went off.
Yeah. You can see it from here. You probably can. 11 o'clock on the black.
Where?
11 o'clock. Exactly the same line. Look at this.
I think this thing's regulated.
Watch out.
Shooting?
Yeah. No. No, don't shoot. Shoot them.
I'll blast this thing again. Does he know it?
We'll get a shot of the firing. Then we'll take the elephants back there and we can video it, you see. All right.
This is elephant hunting the old-fashioned way.
Okay, go and stand on that side of it. Or sit up there on it like on balloon. Yeah, sit on the ear there. Put the gun between your legs. Hold it like. Right. Take your dark glasses off. He never had them.
Oh,
What are we, 5 meters?
all right. 1880 RB Rhoda 4-bore, 23-pound rifle, 2040 grain bullet at about 1,400 feet per second. Looks like one of these. Heart lung shot, penetration unknown as yet.
That's it.
Did it give? Yep.
Just point the barrels this direction so we can look down. That.
Now, John, show a round of ammo. Now I'm
Can't
getting,
see it on my wrist.
yeah.
Hang on.
Get a bit close to the buffalo there, though, Don. So I can get that. Good profit, yeah.
You want it against my shoulder or not?
Yeah, that's. All right. Let's go over on the side.
All right.
Sorry, check.
That's it.
Let's keep. I want to
Yeah.
say this was second buffalo taken. One shot with this 4-bore at 57 paces, slightly downhill. Bullet struck the right shoulder, and we're going to dig it out in just a minute.
Turn it over and you see where the bullet went. Well, now, where? Ja.
Yeah.
You're gonna bet it on Morton as and get it out of that.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull this one out.
Good job.
All right, this shot shows the comparison between what I shot it with and some other typical African cartridges. This rifle is a 4-bore, which means 4 gauge, but the barrels are fully rifled, made by RB Rhoda in London around 1880 to 1882. The diameter of that slug is 970, 97 caliber, It weighs 2,040 grains, which is right around a third of a pound. It's loaded with 16 drams, or 437 grains of black powder, and the muzzle velocity is about 1,400 feet per second. For comparison, I've got here with these two 4-bore cartridges a 510 Wells, which is a 460 Weatherby, necked up to 50 caliber, the same bullet diameter as the Browning machine gun cartridge. This has obviously got somewhat more power than the 460, which is the most powerful commercially available cartridge. This is another Wildcat cartridge, an improved 375, which is a 375 Magnum that's had the shoulder blown out and the body blown out to a straighter contour to hold more powder. This is what I've been shooting the plains game with, and these two are my heavier calibers for the more dangerous stuff.
Okay.
The fact that this buffalo still made it up this hill after being shot in the shoulder with what I believe is the largest rifle you can possibly carry and shoot African game with has led me to the conclusion that, like the boys that fly the F-15 say, too much power is never enough.
Watch out. Hit him again.
This is my fourth buffalo, the third bull I've taken, and the second one shot with this double 4-bore. This is the entrance wound on the shoulder, but not hitting the shoulder bone. Bullet went through the lungs, and there's a similar exit wound on the other side. The second shot, as it was running away, was what Elmer Keith would call a raking shot through the right hip. The bullet's somewhere inside, and we'll probably find it. The buffalo ran about 75 to 100 yards after it was shot. This wound was a result of a shot at about 25 yards. I'm continually amazed at how far these animals go with these big slugs through vital areas. Put halfway out. Get it, Cantella, get down with it. Perfect. Had just found the bullet from the second shot that did not exit the animal. The animal was hit back here in the hip, underneath where you can see, and the bullet was lodged just under the skin right here, which is about 4.5 feet of penetration. It's retained most of its weight, but obviously hit some bone because it's been deformed on one side quite a bit.
It went through that stomach there. You see all of
not in the stomach. That's what broke. What? Stand in it. Stand in it. Come on, man. Don't that, man. Come on, put him, man.
As a final note, I'd like to say that going on safari is an expensive proposition no matter how you do it. There's no way to go on safari like this, longer or shorter, in Africa and do it on the cheap. However, from talking to a number of people who have been on various safaris in various parts of Africa, I do know that it is possible to spend a lot of money and not get nearly as much as you could have in another place. I have not been on safari with any other professional hunters, so I can't speak from personal experience. But I do know that I could not have asked for any better service, better game, or better assistance than I got with Trophy Hunters Africa in Pierce Taylor. I have talked to other friends who've been on safaris in this country and others, and many of them were not nearly so fortunate. So do a bit of research if you're thinking of going on safari, so as to avoid ending up with some hammer mechanic that's pretending to be a professional hunter.